Perfect. We have the recording going. So thank you so very much for joining us here on A Medium's World. I feel a deep passion for the work that we mediums get to do. It is a real privilege and honor to be able to connect with those on the other side, to bring healing messages, to really help reconciling life after death. As I shared last night, I truly believe that death is by far the hardest thing that we as humans ever have to go through. And so being able to reestablish some form of peace, and as well as having opportunity to maybe have some final goodbyes or even some hellos begin to be presented with a change of form becomes a beautiful gift to be able to share. I truly don't believe that who we are as mediums, that we are gifted. I believe that, like small children, if we were given a gift at Christmas time or at a holiday or a birthday at any point, that gift could often be taken away from us, that it as a form of punishment, maybe for bad behavior. And so when I think about being a medium and this being a gift, I don't recognize it as a gift. I recognize this as a very beautiful divine ability and something that we mediums get to do. It's very precious in what we have, and the gift is in the giving. The gift is in the giving of the reading. So we don't possess this gift because, again, the truth of the matter is that when we open up to the spirit world, our connection to the other side cannot be taken away from us. It is always there. Spirit is always present. And so it's not something that comes and goes. It hasn't been given to us and then taken away and put up on a shelf somewhere. It is always available, and the spirit world is always accessible to us. We might have to get over ourselves a little bit and do some deeper healing work and shift maybe our perspectives and understand how it all works in a deeper way. However, as I said, the gift is in the giving of the messages, not in terms of the ability itself. So before we begin, I just want to take a moment here tonight just to move into a little bit of prayer and meditation to open up our conversation here tonight. We have a mix of both mediums who are looking for, sometimes some information, maybe support, as well as confirmation for some of the experiences that they're having. I've received a lot of emails in the last little while, in this last day, from many of you who tuned in last night. And again, I promise I will follow up with each of them, many of you proclaiming some of the experiences that you've had personally. We also have people here who are looking to understand the spirit world, who have lost loved ones and are seeking for some of that closure, some of the healing, some of the understanding of life after death. So our conversation here, even though it's focused on in support of helping to understand who we are as mediums, it's also here to honor those of you who are struggling and who have lost loved ones, and you are seeking for some greater connection to them as well. So I'm just going to invite everyone to take a moment just to close your eyes or just go deep within your own self and take a deep breath in, and just allow yourself to settle into this space, not only here with us as we gather in conversation here tonight, but within your own self. Just that settling, the calm, the gentle breath of the inhale and the exhale. Just allowing you to come into this moment, to be present here in your body, in the conversation. This is a real sacred time that we have. It's a sacred space that we get to hold together. An opportunity to express ourselves vulnerably, and also where we get to honor all of the mediums, the highs and the lows, the challenges, the struggles, and most importantly, to honor those who are grieving. Just as we breathe, it's just this silent acknowledgement of the preciousness of life, the preciousness of this opportunity that we even have to sit together from around the globe. this opportunity to be connected to something more outside of our day-to-day lives, our responsibilities, our demands. And that through this conversation tonight, not only in helping to bring in the validation or confirmation for some of your own experiences, but information that's going to support you in thriving with your sensitivity to the spirit world. And also in helping you to begin to process the most difficult time in your life, the processing of the loss of your loved one. And that through the conversation, not only is there learning and understanding and acceptance, but also peace and some healing, new realizations for yourself, and new ways to recognize your loved one's presence with you. And so for this and so much more, I say thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Amen. I am the light I am. Wonderful. Oh my goodness. All right. Thank you so much for joining me in that. Well, I'm really excited. Of course, as many of you know, my special guest here tonight is Chloe Elgar. Now, Chloe is a magical woman. Not only is she a truth teller and a seer, she really has moved into helping to bring forward some of the ancient wisdom and teaching, the teachings of nature, the natural laws, as well as helping individuals to develop their own intuition, to be able to use their voice and to express a greater aspect of their own personal truth and authenticity. Now, again, I have on the event page, there is a bio, of course, for Chloe there, but more than anything, the link to her website to learn more information about her, perhaps to take some of her courses, her classes, or to be further inspired by the work that she does, I invite you to go to the event page where you'll see her website address at channeledbychloe.com. Hello, Chloe. Welcome to our conversation. Just opening up there, technology's been a little bit, there we go. There she is.
Oh, here we go. Hello.
There we go. Hi. Oh my goodness.
Hi.
It is so, yay. I know, yay. I have been basically, in the enthusiasm and excitement of all of it, like this building up of energy for this event, for these conversations. I don't know who's more excited, me or the spirit world. So.
I can feel it. I can feel all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Oh my gosh. So Chloe, again, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the conversation and this event, helping to, not only share your personal stories and get, really vulnerable and real about your experiences with your abilities, but also, of course, in support and helping, answering maybe some of those deeper burning questions as well. So before, we kind of dive into the kind of some of the specifics on the work you do, I would love for you to share with everyone, when did you start having experiences with the spirit world? I mean, I'm asking you the question. I know the answer, but of course, those people, they're joining and they want to know the story too.
Yeah. So it's always a funny question to ask, because when I go back to childhood, there's always like, is the memory accurate? It's like going back the threads. It's hard to remember, to know what's really like true and what's not. But what feels true for me, and having spoken to my mom throughout the years, is that honestly, I was connected to the spirit realm at a very young age, like since I was a really little girl. I remember there's a memory that I have where my mom had my brother at Boy Scouts, and I was sitting with my dad, and he was like video cameraing, like asking me questions. And I was just like telling him about all these people and beings. Like I just really vividly remember that, even though the home video's gone and disappeared. But so I was always connected to it, but it was very chaotic. Like I was quite tormented by spirits. as a little girl. So I didn't have a lot of like pleasant experiences, I think, when I was younger. It was a lot of scary, sort of confusing, chaotic, and a lot of the things that I was experiencing were very solo and isolated because there was no one. It wasn't something that I ever really shared, except for in conversations with my dad, which is funny because I recently found out that when he was younger, he used to see spirits. So I think that for him, he was sort of like, this is kind of normal. So he would like ask me questions. But yeah, since I was little, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I really have some parallels in terms of our stories. And when we look at mediums, at mediums, there really are what we could say two distinct differences, or I don't like to say categories, but there are mediums who have what's referred to as child onset abilities. So even though, as you shared as well, to have those experiences as a young child, it does get a little bit, memory, affects all of us. And so those very poignant things that stand out from time to time that just really reaffirm that there was something going on at a much more time of innocence there as well as the, like you said, the chaos of it all, and not really having that outlet or that safe place or a way to express it or understand it. And for most mediums who have child onset abilities, we just kind of deal with them as a child and actually don't move into utilizing this connection until much later in life. And then there's a second type of medium, and that medium, those are the adult onset. And adult onset abilities come as a result of someone maybe having a very traumatic experience in their life, like the loss of a loved one will often be an opening for the realizations with the spirit world. Our spiritual awakenings begin to advance that. Trainings in different modalities. I've worked with a lot of Reiki people who get to go through the Reiki program, and all of a sudden dead people are showing up. So there's a lot of different things for us even as adults. And I've even experienced where one woman was up with her kids in the middle of the night, had nothing up until that point. Her children were sick that night. She was tending to them, and boom, all of a sudden she was getting these spirit connections. So it can happen, again, like I said, where we as children have these experiences, and it's been a part of our entire life, but it's not till later in life where we really start utilizing them. When did you kind of move in? Like, when did you begin to devote yourself to doing the work that you do?
Well, I was lucky in that my mom was always really into intuition. She was like, I've had every spiritual book that you can imagine. And she would go to India with gurus. So I was always around a lot of spiritual experiences. So but because of my childhood, a lot of the stuff that was created for me was very like kind of went through the channel of pain and dysfunction for many years through eating disorders and mental health stuff. So when I started to follow the path of healing that through first holistic nutrition and working on health in my body, that gradually bridged me back, because it's like, okay, now my body's healing. And then I started to open up my channels more, and it was like wildfire. Like once the the match got lit, it was like the teacher showed up, and before I know it, I'm like doing psychic classes and workshops. So yeah, it was in my early 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you really had an opportunity to really jump into this at a younger age than what often many mediums do. For, again, it's just dependent on life experiences when our wake up takes place. And of course, there's a lot, even we can think astrologically. I mean, we all have this unique recipe, and we're always on path. So even though some mediums start this journey a little sooner than others, it always is this realization we're always exactly where we need to be when we need to be there. And so I love that you had it kind of all in your environment. It was something that was always open and available to you. For me, the same thing. You look at beginning to heal, as you said, taking the holistic approach and healing your body body. And, for me, it was a lot of my trauma. And as I began to heal my trauma, there's shift and changes within our vibration being, of course, how good or bad we feel, how happy, sad we are, so to speak, how healthy or unhealthy we are. And, same thing, the moment that I started feeling better, it was like the spirit world began showing up even more, right?
You're like, oh, she's ready.
Right. Even though I like dug in my
No.
heels. Did you find that you resist this at all?
Yes. I mean, I'm sure you might remember, Bonnie.
I do.
But I mean, I definitely resisted even doing any spiritual work. And I think my mom might be on the call, but I remember because she did Reiki and she had a friend that would do Reiki. And I was so resistant to it that it was like anything to do with spirituality. I would judge and kind of be like, Mom, you're crazy, or this is weird, don't touch me. Right. So I was very resistant to any form of help or healing for quite like my whole high school teens. But then when I started to work on my intuition and work with my psychic senses, it was really scary for me because of what it brought me back to. It was kind of like everything that happened in childhood. When I developed eating disorders, it was like I closed a chest box. And then when I healed them and started to explore things again, it was like that chest opened and all this fear and all this stuff from my childhood started to come forward. So, and it was easier for me to differentiate between psychic and medium, and I find it's funny, it's all mental, right? But for me, yes, psychic was very much just like being able to perceive energy, versus mediumship was like connecting to other beings. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I started to feel like this, train of beings were starting to come back to me, and in a way that it felt like when I was a child, it was so overwhelming and so scary, because it brought back all those fears of like, I have no choice, I'm not safe, I don't know how to protect myself. So yeah, I was very resistant.
Yeah. And, and your experience and the resistance of it as well is very common, especially I see for a vast majority of mediums who have child onset abilities, because because they kind of go through life completely, and not all of them. I want to, make sure to say mm-hmm. that there, but for the majority of it, where it is avoided, ignored, or there's no outlet for it. And those experiences with the dark or low vibrating energies actually are traumatizing. So we can have trauma based on some of the experiences we have generally as a result of different, in our life, the different, challenges that we've had. But to know that a lot of mediums deal with trauma from these experiences as well. And you were absolutely someone that was coming forward. A lot of those fears that were coming up for you in help, being able to kind of maneuver or navigate your way beyond or through them. What do you feel for you was the most helpful thing in that? Like, when you look at being able to overcome the fear, what recommendation would you have for even mediums listening in, as far as, how do you overcome some of those fears that show up?
So, one thing that I feel like was underneath all of it for me, and listening to your story yesterday, Bonnie, when you told about your grandfather rejecting you, right? Like that, I really felt that. And I'm grateful that, because I grew up in Malaysia, I was around so many different cultures, and my parents weren't very religious. Like, I remember being like, are we Christian? Are we Protestant? Like, what are we? I don't even know. People would ask, like, are you Catholic? I'm like, I don't even really know what I am. I would just like throw out a word. But because of that, I didn't have that sort of fear of rejection that was connected to religion, which was really helpful for me in terms of being able to step into and like be who I am, because I didn't have that. I didn't have those experiences where someone, where I was afraid that, I did, but it felt like past life stuff. It wasn't from this lifetime, which we worked on and we talked about. But I think the biggest thing for me was about working with fear, right? Like, learning how to understand how fear works and what my mind's patterns were around fear. And I like the most helpful way to work in this space for me is to always come back into the place of being in service.
Yeah.
And it's like, no matter how many times you've done readings or group things, that fear will always come up because we're human, we have egos, we get into our heads, right? So it's like, but as soon as you go into the place of being in service and you think about, like for me, I was like thinking about the people that are going to be here tonight. The more you practice that, it really wipes that fear away, because you go into connection with the energy that you're wanting to connect to. So
yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I think it's an important piece to recognize, is that every single medium that goes into doing a reading, because we're dealing with people's hearts. We're dealing with some of the most hardest and difficult experiences where their wounds can go so deep that having that energy of fear and having that really puts us into a place of integrity in doing the work we're doing. And so when we do lose confidence going into a session, when we are feeling fear or uneasy, or nervous, I always say, when nervous, focus on service, right? Because it really is the purpose of, that we're offering and helping and supporting that person. And for mediums, I think sometimes we don't even recognize that those feelings, that feeling of fear when we go into a reading, the energy of fear and excitement show up in the exact same way. Right? Very often what we're labeling or feeling, or what's registering as fear in us, is actually spirit's excitement about the connection that's about to take place. Have you found that too?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chloe, I want to ask you as well, for you, do you have a special story or something, whether it's something you experienced personally, maybe even working professionally with a client, that just absolutely solidified your belief in the spirit world? There was like nobody could convince you otherwise that this wasn't an absolute truth.
Yeah, I have so many, but I was listening to you last time, like she's picked some, so I can pick some too, I'm sure.
Yes.
And also I just wanted to say, going back to the previous question, protection is huge. Like with me, working with fear like learning that you are your own source of safety, and that you have the tools, or you can learn the tools of how to protect yourself, because that again was one of the biggest fears for me. And it's funny how fears in human world are the same as in the spirit world. So it's like, for me, if I feel like a lot of people are coming at me wanting something from me, I'm like overwhelmed. And it's the same with the spirit world. So learning how to protect myself, and that I have a choice, and I know I can control who comes and who doesn't, and when they come. And it's a huge theme and topic, but it's a big one.
I was just going to say that it's a really big one. And I think a vast majority of mediums don't understand that. They feel like they don't have a say in terms of establishing those boundaries and moving into that state of understanding the sovereignty that we have within ourselves to be protected. And that's a really, like I said, that is a big facet in doing this, because it is the one thing that stops so many mediums from even going further into development, just certainly because of the overwhelm and the uncertainty, the fear of what or who they're going to connect with. Even myself, as I shared in the story last night, like me sitting down in front of that medium was like opening up a can of worms. There was nothing pleasant about that for me, because because the fears were so overwhelming.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of a story, the one that popped up for me, and it's not like a amazing story, but it's that it was the first time that because I experienced a lot of like spiritual interaction, but it was always, how when you have a sign from spirit, it's always just you that sees it. It's never like, did you guys all see that as well? Right? It's like no one's there. So that was always what it was like for me with interactions as well. It was like the spirits were always waiting for me to be alone before they would come and kind of talk to me or come into my space. And I think probably it was my awareness, but also there's something about the fact that I wasn't protected, especially when I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So my mom and I were in Montreal a couple years ago. I was getting my green card. I think we were working together at the time, actually. And we were staying at an Airbnb. And the minute we walked into the Airbnb, I was like, there's a couple of spirits in there that are dwelling in this home. But it was like a winter storm. We couldn't go to another place. And I was stressed out about my green card interview. So I'm like, it's fine, let's just stay. The first night was horrible. Like they were like, she's here, we need to talk to her. And there was like a little boy spirit. It was very intense. So the next night I asked my mom if I could sleep in her bed. And that night, like my mom was like, is this the stuff? Because it was like the spirits were messing with me in the bed, turning the lights on and off, making noises. And it was the first time that my mom was like, you're not lying. Like, this is real. This is intense. And I was like, thank you. Yes, I agree. So that was like it was just to have someone really witness, like, because it's like, there's always that question that you have of like, is this just me making this up? And even with reading, sometimes you'll still be like that, right? And it's like, as you share something, you're like, is this person going to be like, you're nuts? But then they're like, oh, that's exactly what the person, my loved one, would say, or something, right?
Right.
So
that one thing you were like really nervous about saying.
You're like, the red car with a star on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea what this represents and means, and I have no other information about this.
Yeah, exactly. So
but it is, and I thank you for sharing that. I think that's so great because, as you said, never before had your mom really witnessed firsthand what you had been living with or what you had been going with. And as much as that would have been a part of her awakening and realizations, it was also that the confirmation for you, just that validation that, okay, I am actually not crazy. This is something that other people, I'm not the only one. Because again, being a medium can sometimes feel very isolating when you have no one to talk to about this stuff, when you have no one to share in some of the experiences. And, I can think of countless times I've even said to my husband, we'd be out of like, oh my gosh, I said, do you see that mother and child standing over there? Look how cute that little girl is. And he's like, there's no little girl. It's like, oh,
never mind.
Exactly.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. So when, of course, as I opened up and I said, we have a mix of people here tonight, mediums who are looking to kind of, glean some information and have their questions asked, but also, people attending who have lost loved ones. What kind of advice or what do you have to offer some hope and some healing to those individuals who are really maybe struggling to process the loss of their loved ones?
For me, death is such a deep invitation. It's like when my death and birth, they have the same sort of impact on us, in that they immediately take us into our primal selves. And I always feel like death it has a way of like cutting away the nonsense. Like it's like a sharp blade, and that when a death occurs, it's like it takes you to the deepest truth of life very, very quickly. And when one of my best friend's daughters was born, it was the first time that I had like witnessed, like almost, I was there. I was there 2 minutes after she was born. So it was like first time I've been with a newborn child, human, before. And I had sessions that day, and I had to reschedule the whole day because I was like, I was so impacted by the birth and the energy of the birth, right? So, and having gone through deaths myself and walked with people through deaths, it has the same impact in that, like, it's an invitation for us to go deeper into the truth of who we are. And as you know, Bonnie, with my work, it's a big part of the work that I do, especially with the runes and, my book being Revealed by Darkness, this idea that I think this was kind of like always my dharma, like, night terrors, like experiencing a lot of beings when I was younger. There's always been this awareness of death and like infatuation with nighttime and darkness. So for me, I think a big part of my work is about inviting others into a new or not an old but forgotten conversation with death. We're really afraid of death in our world nowadays. Yes. We hide from it. When it happens, we're really quiet, and there's a lot that comes up around it, but it's like, it's the most natural process that we all, it's the one thing, it's the one of two things that connects us to nature and reminds us that we are nature, right? So for me, when you are grieving a lost one, it's the most sacred experience to go through. And it's painful, of course, because it's an ending, and endings are really challenging. But for me, it's like, it's the biggest invitation into our truth and the truth of life and the truth of experience. And it doesn't make it easier, but it's like understanding that it is an invitation, and that there is something in here for you in this ending. And I've experienced in my life, whenever I've gone through a death or an ending, it's like, that's a point of transformation for me. And so these contracts that we have with beings in our lives, if they do die during our lifetime, it's like there's an aspect in that contract where they were a part of your transformation, right? So it sounds weird. It's going to sound weird, but I kind of love death, honestly. Like I'm very curious and in deep respect of death in the process. And it's yeah. So I could talk about death forever, honestly. So
I know it's at every medium, right? We just like, death surrounds us. We understand
yes.
the sacredness of death. We understand the transformation, the awakening, the self-realizations that take place through that process. And it's also where I said it is the most hardest for a reason. And because we can't lose someone and come away from that loss, we're forever changed. We're no longer the same person. Everything about who we are, our priorities, how we'd like to be spending our time, what's important, what or who even matters, really begins to alter. And it becomes less and less about other people in terms of what they're doing in their lives, and becomes this moment where we really get to be very self-aware and contained within our own heart and contained within our own life in a way that we hadn't experienced it before. And I know a lot of the work that I do in helping people through their grieving process is really helping them to understand who they are now after the death, because they're not this. And we seek, that's what we do naturally as humans. We seek for the past. We seek for the people who we were, what we like to do. We want them back in our lives. And again, it is this very dark and very hard and difficult sacred beginning of really reestablishing ourselves in our lives.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I could, again,
we could riff on death for a long time.
Surely we could. We totally could. I was the girl in grade 12 biology who actually wrote a report on embalming. And I was fascinated with death and what happens.
That's amazing.
And what goes on. Like, even my biology teacher said at that time, he's like, in all the years I've been teaching, I have never had anyone do a report on embalming. And he said, for that alone, plus you
get an A+.
You get an A+. He said, if I could give you 10 A+, I would.
I love
that. Fascination awesome. With death, right? It's around us. My husband said to me a little while ago, he said, I just had this realization that you and the coroner have pretty similar jobs. And I said, pardon me? I said, I don't understand what you're saying. He goes, well, both of you determine the cause of death, don't you?
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, oh my gosh, this sick meeting.
Yeah.
Anyway. So thank you for that, Chloe. I really appreciate that. I really want to look now in terms of directing, in terms of the advice and how it is, for mediums who are maybe afraid of stepping forward. Maybe they've, have a lot of fears like you did as a child. Maybe they are met with a lot of resistance in terms of people around them not understanding, and even just fear of, what if this is a big fear for a lot of mediums, like, what if I start doing this and then, I'm actually not a medium. Like there's this great fear that we have all these experiences that show us that we are indeed mediums, and yet there's a part of us that go, I really don't even know if I really am a medium. So what advice do you have for those mediums that are tuning in?
I mean, I remember, I even remember asking you that, like, Bonnie,
Right.
I remember it's like the first
It
session,
is.
right? You're like, all right, so let's dive in. I'm like, Bonnie, before we start, can I ask you a question? Like after I've paid the program and stuff, it's like,
Right.
am I really a medium? You're like, oh my God, that's awesome. But it's like, to me, I think that, because I've said to people, like, if you are wanting to be a medium, then you are. There's no one that's like, oh, I really wish I could like talk. Like if you're wishing you could talk to dead people, probably you can, and you are, right? But I think the biggest thing is like to allow yourself to explore the realms within your own sacred space first, like to not focus on how do I share this with this person, or how do I present myself in this space? Like I just, I was just sitting here before, like just looking at all of the tool, like my office, like we're Airbnb-ing our house and we're definitely locking this door because otherwise the guests are going to leave immediately. Because it's like, I've got like everything you can imagine in here, so many different tools and witchy things and stuff. But it's like, surround your home or like your life with practices and tools and things that you're drawn to, like follow that passion first. And then it feels like you will slowly begin to take steps, like it, because it's about, it's like when I ask you, like, am I a medium? It's like, there's something about giving yourself the permission to be who you are. Like you said, it's not a gift, it's just who you are. It's like, so for me, having that, allowing yourself just to acknowledge these things that you're drawn to, that you're curious about. It's like when someone's like, am I an artist? And it's like, yeah, you're an artist. I remember like with being a writer, and, it's like, you're a writer if you're a writer, like just call yourself a writer. Right. So it's like all these things that we desire about ourselves that we're afraid to claim. So first, allow yourself to claim it within your own sacred space, and whatever that means, like start doing rituals where you connect to your ancestors, or offer little mini readings for friends or your partner, right? Like have go out. For me, it's always like go outside in nature and connect to the spirits of nature, right? And then, talk about like, and then you can start talking about like what it looks like coming out to your community or changing your job, or right. So that's kind of what it feels like.
And it really, I love that you said it, because it really is establishing that great acceptance inside of yourself. And when you can really understand what's true for you, what you believe, what drives you, where your passions lie, you begin to really, that really begins to solidify inside of you. And once you can do, like, I remember even for myself, even my husband wasn't aware of a lot of the things I was doing, even previous to me, leaving my job and wanting to work. Like he didn't know
awesome.
how many, the experiences not only that I was having with the spirit world, but some of the classes I was taking, the healing work I was doing, seeing alternative healers, he knew nothing about it, because and not because I was hiding it from him,
right.
But it just felt like it was something that I just needed to honor and just keep within some secrecy, just for my own self. It was like a secret between me. Sacred. It was just a secret that I could hold. It was between me and my God, so to speak, between me and the universe. And it was until I got used to understanding it. I really got a sense of, okay, I think I understand what this is about, where I'm being called. And then, of course, once we realize it, that push becomes really
Yeah.
big. I always joke about free will, right? And not that free will is a joke, but I always say, we have free will until we don't have free will anymore, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like we can go around and consciously choose all these things. And then all of a sudden there is where, okay, and there's no more free will because, we are here, that we have this sacred contract to
You claimed it. Once you claim
exactly.
it, yeah.
Yeah. I
Then
loved
it's
your
like divine intervention kind of starts to show up.
Exactly. Like I loved your analogy of lifting the lid off the box. I think it's like Pandora's box, or you open the door to the
Yes.
spirit world. There's no closing it. Like
No.
there's no reversing things.
No, 100%. And that's where see, honestly, like that's like a couple of years ago, that would scare me, but it's like,
Right.
that's where you learn that you are your own source of safety, and
Yes.
you have the tools to,
Yes.
and then you get to like, because I think also a big part of it is the fear that we have about the spirit realm because of mainstream culture and religion, etc. So it's like, that's the other thing that I was thinking yesterday, just watching, listening to your story, is like, I sometimes forget that this is not normal anymore, right? Because I'm very much living in my bubble. And so I'm just like, yeah, I talk to spirits, like I'm a witch, this is what I do. And then all of a sudden, I realize that there's people that are still very much not believing in that. So I think that's also the cool thing to recognize, though, is like, once you, like anything, once you claim something as a part of you, it just becomes your world.
It does.
And then there's no figuring it out. It just is.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. As you're saying that, it reminds me of with one of my sons. He said to me one time, he's like, "Mom, I know you think all of this stuff is really cool and normal, but this isn't normal. People don't live like this. Only we live like this. Only you live like this, Mom, right?"
Yeah, for sure.
But it is.
I think I'm very normal, but my husband reminds me often that it's not true. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, what I think where the abnormality is if people aren't open and experiencing this. To me, not being open to the spirit world, not having these connections to our guides and to the ancestors and to these beautiful beings that are the energy of it. I think it's weird that they're not experiencing it. Like, that's not normal to me.
Well, and it's like they are experiencing it, but they're not allowing themselves to acknowledge that, because they are, right? We're all energetic. We're all energy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh, Chloe, of course, we could go on and
we could
on.
Chat for hours.
Seriously. Oh my gosh. I do want to turn to the chat, though. Of course, inviting people, if you have any questions for Chloe or even of myself. Chloe is going to stick around here for the next 15 minutes. It's quite late where she is in the world. So she's going to, of course, be saying farewell here in about 15 minutes. But I am going to stay on for about a half an hour beyond that to continue to answer some of your questions here tonight. So I'm going to go over here to the chat. Chloe, again, too, if there's anything that jumps out at you.
I feel like you're so good at this after your Facebook Lives, Bonnie. You're like a master at it.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. I've got it. Oh, so Rita is saying about protecting yourself while grieving. It becomes overwhelming to be around so many people. It takes so much energies, and learning to set boundaries makes it easier. It's not as so much of a question, but let's talk about boundaries here, especially boundaries in terms of honoring the death cycle, Chloe.
I mean, I think to me, it's like, in our world, we sort of have a narrative where it's like someone dies, the funeral is a couple days to a week after, and then you bounce back and you're back to life. And that, for me, I always go back to ancestral traditions, northern traditions. It's like, I mean, growing up in Malaysia, there were so many beautiful traditions around death, where it's like the whole town, like for instance, in Malaysia, when a person in a village would die, and the whole town would be in mourning for at least a week. They would carry the body through the town, right? So to me, it's like giving yourself permission to be in the space of death, because when you've experienced someone die, you are also going through your own death, right? And so, it's like allowing that to be, it's kind of like for women with our menstrual cycles, like it's only just starting to become normal for a woman to be like, hey, I'm gonna, take the day off because I'm on my bleed, right?
Right.
Whereas like that, I'm sure, Bonnie, for you, it was absolutely not
Oh,
normal.
yeah, you
You
didn't
wouldn't
talk about
mention
that. It
it.
didn't
It's not a
happen.
thing.
No, it's not a thing.
Yes. Right. So it's like these natural experiences that we all go through, death, menstrual cycles, for as women, right? It's like allowing ourselves to claim the nature of it, right? So of course, when you are experiencing the death of someone, you're in the womb of that death. And so for me, when my dogs died 2 years ago, like I couldn't go out and be around people because I was so raw and so sensitive. And so allowing yourself to take care, like really simplify what it is that you need, and giving yourself full permission to take that time, that space, those practices. Like that feels so important, and missing in death in our world.
Right. And, even again, looking at giving yourself permission to just say no to things and,
Yes.
just really honoring that the sacredness of what this is. I really truly believe that when it comes to grieving, that we as a society really do have it all wrong. So I really love, your experience of what you shared from Malaysia, because this is even when I look at someone who has lost their husband or a mother who's lost their child. And I'm just using, there's many relationships we could go
Right.
into, but even the preciousness of our children, or even our fur babies, like that's a real those can be really very difficult losses. That person, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be honored 100%. Like if we could give them a permission card for the
Mm-hmm.
whole year after that death, for them to be able to not talk if they don't want to talk, for them to
Right.
say whatever they wanted to say to someone without anyone taking it personally or getting upset, just really honoring that person through their grieving process instead of judging them or the expectation of them needing to go to work or to keep up with things. How many times have I been sitting in sessions and someone will have said that, well, my family told me that I needed to snap out of it and get back to work already. We can't
Right.
snap out of our grief. That's not possible,
No.
right?
No,
So
it's
we
like a
we
season. It's like
right,
saying it's you're in Alberta. The snow's got to be done. It's like, no, it's
right.
the winter season. It's going to finish when it's finished.
Absolutely. And sometimes
So
that season extends longer than what
yeah,
we
sometimes
actually
snow comes
want.
in spring.
Right? Exactly. So I just really
Yeah.
feel that, if we really began to honor people and just really respect them, so then they didn't need to put in boundaries. They didn't need to worry about saying no. They didn't need to feel guilty about if they upset somebody or somebody's feelings got hurt, or if, they could say no to an invitation, etc. That it just is this beautiful space that we hold for someone just
Mhm.
compassionately. I think that, we look at a lot of religions and different things, I think within the Jewish culture, they have it, part of that so right, because they sit in their quiet time. The family gathers, nobody looks at the family, nobody talks to the family, community gathers around them, and they're completely just honored for their grief. Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
wonderful. All right. I have a question here from Tasha for you. She
Mhm.
says that last night when I was speaking, I talked about 2023 being a year of major changes for mediums within the energy. What's your opinion on 2023 and these changes that are anticipated this year?
Oh, okay.
I know,
Get to
right?
do a little bit of a tuning into what's coming. I mean, honestly, I agree with Bonnie on my mom's very into numerology. So I grew up with numerology, like almost couldn't get away from it. So I was like, yeah, it's a 7-year. I know that. But I do feel like it's a big year of like endings, like it really feels like a lot of stuff is ending. Like there's not, and it's like action endings, like things are needing to be put, the endings need to almost be chosen. So it does feel like it's a really big spiritual, I mean, it feels like we've been in this like womb of spiritual consciousness rising for, the past 3 years. And it does feel like this year, there's almost like the dials being turned up like 5 times more, right? But the other thing that I really feel is that in in the endings, just like in death, there's a really strong transmission around being returning to earth. There's a rune that represents this. It's called Manas, and it's referred to as the rune of mankind, and it speaks to the concept of oneness or non-separation. But it takes it another level down, because it's this idea that we are physical. We're not just physical beings having or we're not spiritual beings having a physical experience. We're actually human, right? So there's not this like separation. And it really feels like this year is taking that, bringing that forward for a lot of us. So it really feels like physical stuff. I feel like a lot of physical stuff is coming up for a lot of people, like health things, and not from a fear place, but it's just like the body is earth, and I feel earth is calling us in to it in a really big way, because it's like we talk about spiritual consciousness rising, but it's like we sometimes forget that means that we are deepening, because we're on earth. We're not going to float off of earth. That's like, it's rising, we leave, right? It's like, no, we're here. We have to like stay, we have to plant deeper into here in order for our consciousness to rise, because that's part of our partnership, and we are also earth. So yeah, that's what it feels like for me.
Absolutely. And I would honestly have to agree with you on that too, Chloe, because what I found a lot lately within my client sessions and through some of the healing and the prayers and the work that we do, that there has been a lot of guidance from the divine as we move into these healing energies to help bring people to become more embodied within their own self, more, instead of these transcendent experiences that we have within our connections to these higher realms, that we're grabbing hold of those energies and now bringing it in and embodying it, and very often moving down. I've been doing a lot of moving people down into their belly, into their sacral, into their root, so that they can be embodied within their love and light instead of it out there all over the place. Right.
Yeah.
Bring it in, because we are going
anchoring.
Deeper. We're anchoring. We're going deeper. Absolutely.
Yeah. So lots of like psychic, to me, it's like a lot of physical symptoms, physical activations with psychic, expansion. So
absolutely. Yeah. A lot of
great. Really fun.
I know, right? That's what I think too. But it is, when we say, almost like an amplification, if to understand, if we had a clear quartz and you suddenly put a clear quartz beside a crystal, it becomes amplified times 10. That's really what we can expect. Our crystalline bodies are being activated in that exact same way through these energies. And even at that, a lot of spirit phenomena as well, because when we become more grounded into our reality here, we're going to start to notice more of the unseen realm even more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Such a great question. Oh my gosh, such a great question. All right, so I'm going to go here again. Please, you guys, in the chat, throw your questions in there. No question is a dumb question. Everything is on the table for us in conversation here. So, oh my gosh, you guys are so welcome. So people saying how it resonates with them, especially the night terrors, the closeness to death. Faith is sharing, it's a real part. Rita's saying too, the privilege to be with someone when they die. It truly is the gift that we are given, truly in their time. Here we go. Jo Ellen, she said, this is so good. My husband has health issues and is obsessed with learning about death right now. I may have him listen to this tape tomorrow. Also, I've gone through a period of night terrors. Is that spirit trying to reach me and connect with, an invitation to connect with them?
It's definitely something that I've explored, because there's so many different ways that people talk about the different things, because it's the unknown, right? And there's like, it's the spirit realm. There's an aspect of the unknown to it. It's sort of like there's many different theories, and we all sort of, I find that we all derive our own what feels true, which I'm sure is true of everything. But to me, I find that my night terrors were that there were beings that I was connected to. So for instance, within the realm of the runes, and, in the realm of the runes, there's the giants, and there's, there's beings that are not these like beautiful, lovely, light beings, right? Sorry, giants. So it's like, I think that sometimes in night terrors, there can be beings that are they can be spirits that are trying to contact you or connect to you, but they might not always be ones that you want to connect with. And it's part of it is that I think as kids, we're, going back to my own experience, even though my mom was very did her own work, she hadn't really experienced the stuff that I had. So she didn't know anything about protecting the space or creating boundaries. So I was just this big open channel. And so, there's growing up in Malaysia, there's a lot of different spirit stuff going on in that place. So I was exposed to a lot of different energies and then feeling my own fear. So I think that it is that there are beings that wanting to contact you and connect with you, but maybe it's not always the ones that you want to connect with. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there too, that there are definitely these, what we could say, lower vibrating beings who do have a purpose for us. And very often it's to wake us up to the fact that we are a medium. It's almost like their push at us for us to move into development, for us to understand our own light, our own power, and our connection to the other side in a deeper, more intimate way. They are actually helping us to honor that sacred contract that we hold as mediums. That one, that I always say, I'm going to have a conversation when I get back to the other side. I want to sit down and have a conversation. There's a few things I'd like to discuss, like who signs up for some of this stuff, right? I just like, oh my gosh, apparently I did.
Yeah.
But it is, looking at, those things where all of a sudden maybe we have been avoiding, denying, ignoring. We haven't necessarily been following the signs, the gentle nudges, so to speak, to wake us up to this out of fear or beliefs or whatever it is. And sometimes these night terrors and these interactions with these lower vibrational beings is not to move us into fear, but absolutely the invitation for us to move into our power.
I love that, because for me, kind of going back to how much fear I had and how much I was tormented by spirits, it was the catalyst that really brought me to the work that I do and the realms that I work in now, and to be able to work in these realms without any fear and to be very solid. Right. And that's the thing that I always say about mediumship, is that it teaches you boundaries more than anything in the world, because like you really learn how to, in the middle of the night, be like, you need to leave. Right. And it's like, to be able to do that, especially as a woman, it feels like a really big teaching, right? For us to like harness our power. And again, kind of going back to what I said, like to realize that we are the source of our own power, and that we get to decide, right? No matter who it is, whether it's a light being or a dark being or whatever it is, right? So yeah.
Right. And this is where, again, I love that, we do get to decide about this, where a lot of, meetings maybe don't even realize, as you said, they're waking up, they're in terror. They don't, they draw back or recoil, instead of kind of moving into more of authority within their own space, and they're in their own homes. And, as we look at this is also this, where we kind of look at, we really need to understand who we are, understand how this world works. Like you said, once you understand the realms, and once you understand the intricacies, where there's education, fear becomes dissolved. If even when I, in my program, one of the modules that I have is called into the dark to bring the light. It's so that we can have the conversations, beginning to distill the fear of the dark, not giving our power to it, because when we do fall into those fear and we do recoil, it's giving more power to those energies, which just makes the whole experience more chaotic and more fearful in the first place. Whereas when we can, even just as you said, through that night to be able to say, no, you need to leave. Everybody out, leave me alone. This is not acceptable. It's an important facet. And so we look at boundaries of saying, not only do we need to have it in terms of these other realms, but it also forces us, like you said, especially as women, to have those boundaries in our personal life. Because what I've, found is that if I haven't found, the physical and the non-physical world work so in tandem with each other, that if I don't have boundaries in place in my personal life, spirit's not going to honor the boundaries that I've asked them to have either.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really interesting how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Well, Chloe, I could talk to you for hours yet. Oh my gosh, I just enjoy our time together so much.
I know,
Again,
this has been fun.
This has been so great. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your perspectives, your wisdom, and being a part of the conversation here tonight. So until we have opportunity to chat again, take care and be well.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
You're
Thank
very
you,
welcome.
everyone. Thank you for having me.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, so we're going to stay here and continue the conversation together. Again, any questions you have, I want to take opportunity to spend some time with you and kind of move through some of these in the best possible way. So I'm just going to read through. Oh my gosh, I just love. Oh, Faith, I love that. Where Faith, you're saying, or the aha moment where you say, I wondered why my career led me to work with the elderly and the dying, if you fear death. And again, creating that intimate understanding about death, it really, that's been one of the things, even as Chloe had just shared, really understanding the true nature of death, to understand, death is a change of form. We go from physical to non-physical. We are eternal beings, which means that the spirit in us lives forever, and that we, even though, death feels like a separation, it's our physical body that creates the separation for us. It gives us the illusion of separation from those that we've loved after they've died. And so being able to understand death and to understand, how to communicate with our loved ones. This, as I said yesterday, being a medium is more than, is more than talking to dead people. Being a medium is more than doing readings for people. I have a lot of people that come through and take my program so that they can understand life after death, so that they know how to have a conversation or communicate with their loved one now that they're in spirit form. And so, coming into any mediumship development program or learning more about it really is, very beneficial in helping to heal and process grief as well. So yeah, we do feel a deeper call. There is in terms of the beauty of death, and even in having opportunity to be at the bedside with some of my loved ones when they made their transition, and we say it's the hardest and most beautiful experience in that moment. And so being witnessed to someone's crossing and someone's relief that they, in the spirit being relieved of the body, is a beautiful experience for sure. So it's interesting. Yeah, if their fear of death, it's like the universe guiding you to become intimate with death, to understand death, simply, not simply, but, really about helping you to understand yourself better. Yeah, so beautiful, so beautiful. All right, let's go here. Helen saying here too, I want to just respond where you said you've had a lot of death in your inner circles, many that have been present with you, where you've been present in their transition and crossing, that it's a part of your purpose to be in that intimate moment. Yeah, I'm going to say, and for mediums, death surrounds us, which means that, we will either have a lot of people who we have lost in our close inner circles, or we're connected to a lot of people who always seem to be caught up in death themselves. We are always in position to be of service through that transition between life and death. And very often, and what I teach in my programs as well, is that, we can be of service during times like that by simply being the medium in which that compassion and that healing energy is coming through. We often don't even need to say anything when we're standing in presence or witness of someone's crossing, or sitting vigil with someone after, they've experienced death of a loved one. That simply our presence not only brings comfort, it brings healing. And so when I look at mediums as what I refer to as being compassionate healers. And it's because there is this energy of compassion. There is just this source of compassion that moves through us. And very often we will find ourselves in times of crises in helping and surrounding people with this love and with this compassion through some of their darkest nights and their greatest deaths that occur, whether those be personally or those be of their loved ones. So yeah, it really is, it is a part of the purpose of being a medium. It absolutely is. And so that's where, again, learning to understand about, our abilities, understanding, getting an intimate relationship in terms of, what happens after the death experience is very beneficial to be able to help and hold space for people, to also bring some of those messages through for them at a time when maybe they need them the most. Here again, for a lot of people who are afraid of, people finding out that you're a medium, or they're going to be uncomfortable, and you're maybe afraid that they're going to be uncomfortable. Perhaps, you're in a position where the people around you really don't believe that this is even possible, that there are ways that we mediums can bring through those healing messages without having to disclose the source of where we're getting that message from. So we can still be connecting with their loved one on the other side, and we can be given words that often are, can be mistaken for these words of wisdom, or something someone really needed to hear in that moment. And they really needed to hear it simply because we as mediums, we know it. We've been told that this is what we're being asked to share with this person. And we don't have to say, so your mom is coming forward to me right now, she's, and begin to go into a vast, explanation of who our source is. But we can simply receive that message of for consolement, for healing, and offer it. An example of this is, I remember sitting with someone who was very suicidal, going through a real, already had lost their own loved ones, had lost two loved ones in a car accident, and she was suicidal. She just couldn't imagine going forward in her life on her own, and she really didn't believe in the work that I do. She's a friend. She always respected me, but it wasn't like she really was open to this work. It was almost like that unspoken thing between the two of us. We got along really good, but we just didn't talk about it. And so as I'm with her during this time, her mom is coming forward, and her mom is saying, she needs to remember that there's lots of life for her to live. There's lots of love to be found yet. She to not give up hope, because, all of these things. So I knew I couldn't tell her what her mom wanted to say. And so I formed it with saying, I think if your mom was here, your mom would be telling you you're going to be okay. She'd really probably want you to remember that there's still love to be had in this world, and a lot of people who love you and still need you in this life. So I was able to reword or the approach in what I was presenting, even from the other side, for someone who actually didn't believe. So there are ways, and I think this is the gift of the medium, that very often we are the medium in which we're taking something intangible and making it tangible, whether that be we're taking the energy, we're really energy interpreters, or what we are. We can interpret this energy. It begins to make sense within our intuitive mind, and then we're able to offer it in words or in writing, and of course, sometimes simply in our presence when people are going through their death experiences or through those difficult and challenging times. So that's my long answer to saying it's a part of our purpose. All right. Katie, I love this. Katie says, can you please speak more about the need to pull ourselves down into our bellies or stay grounded while working with spirit? Yes, absolutely. So this becomes really important. So we do want to go through a process where we are shifting our energy body to go into a higher vibration and frequency to be able to fully receive that communication from the other side. So we go through our practices where we move into more of an expansion and make space, expanding our love, expanding our light, and creating a space for that connection with the spirit world. Once that's established, we can often feel so spaced out, so disconnected, nothing really makes sense, etc. What I find in those occurrences is just that maybe we need to just move our energy more with the conscious approach, and just by our intention to breathe into our belly, and to breathe into the belly, which means just instead of breathing from the chest, just give yourself an opportunity to let your tummy, breathe in and out instead. And you're going to see that the simple act of doing that is going to be enough to regulate your energy field, enough to take out that spaceness that you might feel, and just to regulate that connection. And so that's a really great way to be able to stay kind of grounded inside of your own self. We need to be grounded inside of our bodies, because the spirit world uses our body as, to bring through these transmissions and frequencies of energy that come in many different ways. And then we move into our mind and help with the mental mind to be able to decipher and make sense of what it is that we are receiving in the messaging. And so, we need to be in our body in order to do that. I'm a firm believer and advocate that we actually are already grounded. Our physical body is what grounds us here, that we don't need to, if we're dropping a grounding cord or we're doing anything more than that, then we're putting ourselves too much in the physical realm, and we're pulling ourselves out of the spiritual realm. So we want to make sure that we're expanding our energy field, and then just allowing ourselves with awareness to breathe into our belly. That's just enough to stabilize the energy, so we can be attuned to what our body is receiving, as well as still open to that communication with the spirit world as well. And then when we're finished, this is where, again, when I find I'm doing lots of readings, or I'm, facilitating retreats and things like that. This is even Chloe said, let's go out into nature. Let's go spend some time in nature and utilize earthing processes and connection to Mother Earth in order to kind of go back into, or begin to settle into, our time-space reality again. So, I'm, and in my program, it's one of the things I talk about. It's just a belief that we need to ground. After doing this work, it's just a belief that we need to be grounded. The thing is that when we move into higher vibrational frequencies, it's like we move into this higher frequency, and then through traditional practices or some of the things out there, we're being told that we need to go back into the box that we just left, that was uncomfortable and hard and difficult. And the truth is, we can allow ourselves to shift within higher frequencies, allowing the energetic body to really expand within our love and our light, and then allow for that energy to stabilize. We just need the energy to stabilize. We're already grounded. So being able to just become conscious of the breath in our belly is enough for us to do. And in my program, I actually have reversed some of the process, where we go down into Mother Earth to do a sacred ritual and sacred prayer, and work with the earth energy as we move up to connect with the spirit world. So we're already grounded, and we begin utilizing the energies that are already available to us. Okay. Awesome. Great question. Great question. Karina, I love this question. Can you speak about ancestral relationships and how they affect you? I've always been told I have ancestral hooks on me. Is that good or is it bad? And how do I get rid of it? This is a really beautiful, beautiful and deep question. And I'm going to kind of move through it the best way here. But to understand that, yes, we absolutely do have ancestral relationships that can still affect us here, where we have within the bloodline karma that needs to be reconciled and taken care of. And if within the ancestral line, if that karma is bleeding over from one lifetime to another, it's going to be attached to us. It's going to be part of our, we'll say, our karmic responsibility to not only heal what was, from our own history within of the history of the soul, but also in terms of healing the ancestral patterns and healing the bloodline. When we look at, these hooks, how do we get rid of them? Well, the way to do it is about doing our deep healing work ourselves, because when we look at healing our lives, and again, whether we're aware of a karmic relationship or not, but we're giving ourselves time to really go deep into self-reflection, doing the deeper healing work in terms of releasing not only maybe the ways that we've been creating separation even from our own self, maybe through self-love practices, self-forgiveness practices. And you're going to notice I said self-forgiveness. I have a whole teaching on forgiveness here. I don't believe we need to forgive anybody for anything. That's a whole different conversation for another time. But when we begin to do our deeper spiritual work here, we begin to release, as we resolve the karma, those hooks begin to let go. And that's because the healing work that we do in this lifetime, it affects 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. Right? This is like this. I used to always think, before I woke up, and I wouldn't say that because I don't even feel like we ever wake up. I think we're constantly waking up. And anyone who says, oh, I'm woke, it's like, yeah, no, you might have some work to do. So just in my journey of waking up, prior to that, I used to think, oh, I wanted to create generational wealth so that, my kids never had to worry about money. And that was something that I could just, they could, I was building something that they would be able to use and be supported with in their life and for my grandchildren, etc. But it wasn't until I got on my healing journey that I went, this is the greatest wealth that we can offer, knowing that as we're doing our deeper healing work, though we're letting the ancestors be healed as well. And we're healing our children and our great-grandchildren and the great 7 generations forward. This is the greatest aspect of wealth that I could ever give to my family. Very often during healing sessions, it's not uncommon for ancestors, loved ones to show up to participate in those healing sessions, because in us moving into our spiritual healing, they're receiving the spiritual healing too. And that's how we begin to let those hooks go. They're neither good or bad. Karma is neither good or bad. It really isn't. Karma is just the balancing of things. And so we look at, we can, through our conscious choices and what we're putting out into the world, becomes the most important aspect in terms of being able to resolve some of the things that we perhaps were, did in this lifetime, or perhaps that we're still carrying over from our own lifetime or that of our ancestors. So that's really, like I said, they're neither good or bad. It's just that, our own healing is how we get rid of it. Okay. We can even, we can ask our loved ones, hey, you guys, pull back. I'm working on it, but it does come down to absolutely self-directed. All right. Going through, let me see. Oh my gosh, so good. Okay, Tasha, I love this question too. How do you protect yourself from psychic attack, negative energies, and also to avoid psychic burnout? So those are really two questions in one. So, but that's okay, like, and which is great. So I'm just saying I'm going to go in one direction and then I'll change and answer the second part of your question. So first and foremost, protecting ourselves from psychic hooks really comes from being in that fear base. And so where we look at understanding, like Chloe said earlier, understanding we are the source of our protection, we are the source of all of this too. So simply being able, and I teach this, we go into it deeper, of course, within my program, but as we kind of hold with intention through meditation, through invocation, through asking whatever word you would like to use to put on it, we basically just ask for all the non-beneficial energies, all psychic attack energies, anything that I'm carrying within my field, be released from me now. And then just simply by asking that question allows for those energies to be cleared, understanding that everything is energy. So when we begin to recognize the energy, when we begin to speak to the energy and ask the energy to go, the energy has no choice but to go. It's no different when there's a spirit in our home and we're saying you need to get out of here. You know, when the moment we evict them, that spirit has to leave. We're taking authority, and we can take authority with the sovereignty of our energy field as well. And when you release that, you can ask. And what I always say is, so I go through that little thing, I ask for those non-beneficial energies to be released. And I ask for the energy to be sent back with unconditional love. And so, which means I'm going to give back wherever this energy, it's not a matter of who sent me the energy. It's just a matter that I'm holding some energy. I feel there's something going on and I'm feeling off. We become very attuned to our own frequencies and field. And so if you're noticing that, it's just, I'm going to send it back with unconditional love and in consciousness. And the reason I say in consciousness is so that the person can have their own awakening, that they can go, whoa, hang on a second. I can't be saying those nasty things, or, you know, whatever it is. It's just that we want to know that within the greatest spiritual law says, ask and you shall receive. And so when we ask, the universe, I mean, it happens. Ask and it's going to be received. So when you ask for these energies to be cleared off, they will be. So we say, send it back with unconditional love and in consciousness, and in its place, to bring to me an imprint of joy, of ease, of health, of, you know, peace, whatever it is. We always want, whether we're doing a space and energy clearing or whether we're clearing energy from our field, we always want to bring in the preferred energy instead. Because if we don't add a preference in it, it creates a void. And when there's a void, other energies, that same energy we just released, it can come right back to us again. That room that we just cleared and staged and went through the whole process, if we haven't asked for something of preference, then those energies that just left are all going to come back, right? So we just look at understanding our own energy field works that exact same way. Okay. Now, the second piece of it, how do you avoid psychic burnout? This is a real important question here too. And the reason, you know, we look at very often, we are what I refer to not only in mediums, but we are spiritual empaths. And when you understand that there's many, just like, you know, so many identities and careers and titles in the world, there's many different, very many different kinds of empaths as well. There are environmental empaths, there are animal empaths, there are emotional empaths, there are, you know, there are a mental empath where, man, where, you know, people's thoughts, or it's like we can get in their heads and hear what they're saying. You know, there's all kinds of different scope of it. But for us as mediums, we are what's referred to as spiritual empaths, which means we have the heightened experience of all those other empathic types that are out there. And we're sensitive to the spirit world as well, which means we kind of have it coming in from all directions. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. We're sensitive to thoughts. We're sensitive to emotion. We're sensitive to physicality experiences because of the energy. We're sensitive to the environment, and on and on and on. So in understanding that we we as these spiritual empaths require time to be able to recharge, replenish, and take care of our own energy. And if we're not doing that, and as you know, we just want to help people as mediums. We just want to help. We know people are hurting. They are suffering within the hardest scope of life, and we just want to do whatever we can to make a difference for them, to ease up some of the burden. But what happens we're constantly giving, when we're constantly giving of our time, giving of our energy, or even doing several readings back to back to back without an opportunity to hit the pause button, without an opportunity to reset, without an opportunity to slow down and be in our life too, we can move into becoming burnt out. We get burnt out. No different than any job or career where people are, where work has become at the forefront of everything in their life. They can become overtaxed and become burnt out. We as mediums can become overtaxed if we are constantly using our abilities in service to others. This is about the realization that we need to also be in service to ourselves. We need we need days off. We need times to rest. We must, even working professionally, we need to have allocated time where we are available to do readings and when we're not available to do readings, because we can't do this 24/7. We really can't. And the reason for, we can, if we choose to, we have free will. So we can choose to do this 24/7. But what happens is that there are these things that begin, these variables that begin to take place where we do begin to become burnt out. And when we become burnt out, we fall into compassion fatigue, and we can reach a point where we're really no good to anyone, not even ourselves. And so we can look at doing this work and doing lots of readings, and and we feel this deep, compelling push to be able to help and to be of service. And we can go really hard at it. But what'll happen is we won't be doing it for a long period of time, because now our health is going to suffer. Now we're going to have challenges in our own life, even maybe in our relationships, or within any aspect of life. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves, as I said, we're no good to anyone. And so this really becomes about creating a very balanced lifestyle, a very balanced in terms of giving and receiving, of doing this work and taking days off for ourselves, about looking at, not only working and being of service, but making sure you have ample time to play and to enjoy your life, and to focus some of your time and your energy for your family, as well as time and energy maybe on some other passions that you have, some other things that you enjoy. Because as much as we're here to help and be of service for people and help them, we can't lose sight that we have a life to lead here too. Like, this is our life matters. We matter in the equation. And as I said, if without our health, we're nothing to anyone. So we look at being a little bit selfish with our time. And I say selfish, not from an egotistical point of view, but where we're putting ourselves so we can be full, that the best of us can show up for the sessions, the best of us can show up in doing this work. And then, of course, because our soul senses are not taxed, those energy centers have opportunity to replenish and rebalance and find that healthy flow as well. So it comes down to how do we avoid psychic burnout? It all comes down to balancing not the physical and the non-physical worlds, but making sure that we're balancing doing this work and being of service to others, as well as ensuring that we are in service to ourselves. In fact, I've found over the years that the more that my business has grown, the more call that I have to spirit in helping other people, the more time I actually need off. The more, it used to be if I worked an hour, I'd make sure I had an hour in between those sessions to kind of recoup and replenish. And now I'm looking at, sometimes if I have an hour session, because of the high frequencies of energies and what's taking place in those sessions, that I might need an hour and a half in between sometimes, just as an idea. Going into group or stage mediumship events, depending on the size of the event, means going into them days before. I'm completely in self-care. I'm completely focused. I'm meditating. I'm taking care of myself. I'm going for a massage. I'm doing things so that my energy and my body and me is that I'm nurtured and best prepared to go into the space of being in service to others. And then once that group reading is over, following that, I'm taking a few days off now in order to allow for my energetic recovery. I found before, and I mean, I learned this the hard way. You got to learn it the hard way before you really, and that's why, my program, that's why I love teaching this, is helping mediums. So you don't have to learn it the hard way. I had to, and I hope that's something I have to share and that I teach was going to help with that, because it is, where you just look. And there were times when I would go and do a group reading on a Friday night. Saturday and Sunday, I would spend back to back doing readings. I would get home, and Monday I was back into clients, and then I didn't have a day off till maybe Thursday or Friday. And I just found that, you're kind of going on a high because it's so engaging and it's so much fun and everything. But by the time that end of the week came, those, even 10 days later, like, I was exhausted. I could barely get out of bed. I couldn't function. I was having to reschedule clients. And that just, I had to really take a look at, okay, I needed to look at how I was showing up for myself as I was showing up for other people. And that becomes a really important part of it. All right. So thank you so very much. Oh my gosh, I've absolutely enjoyed my time with you. Your questions are wonderful. And of course, a fabulous conversation here with Chloe as well. The copy of the replay, if there's anything in here you'd like to, listen to again, of course, will be available on the event page. And again, your questions that you've asked, I may not have got to them tonight, but as I said, I'll be answering those as part of another program I'm going to be posting and having out on my YouTube channel. So thank you so much for being here with me tonight, for sharing this very special time and very special space with you. All right, everybody, good night, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.